12-hour shift. I'm gonna break down and leave. 'Cause in the winter time I get so lonely. Find the one that stole me, heart been getting low. Winter time I get so lonely. Find the one that stole me, heart been getting low. So goddamn useless, a waste of my time. Easy way to make a dollar now, about my mind. Oh, you'll never find me, 'cause I'm where the sun don't shine. I've been lost for so very long now, and I'm happy to stay away.
What's up, motherfuckers? Welcome back to Black Hoodie Alchemy. As always, I'm your host, Anthony Tyler, broadcasting here on the Fringe FM initially. And if you're listening to this as it releases, I hope you're having a good start to the new year. I'm recording this a little bit in advance. I recently, before the new year, went back to Anchorage, Alaska. I was raised in Eagle River, so anyone that's not familiar with Alaska, it's right outside. It's the closest thing to Anchorage. So usually I just say Anchorage, unless I'm talking with someone from Alaska. Now, I'll mention some fun things about my trip in Alaska, but obviously, given the title of the episode, this is going to be heavily based on, like modern Alaskan lore. 'Cause I don't know how real all of this stuff is, but what we can definitely call it is real lore. It's active conspiracy theory in the traditional sense, the kind of conspiracy theories that I grew up on that weren't so loaded with Trump being some sort of savior and just everything else, like the Alaskan pyramid, the government hiding up. Where do I even begin? All right, let's just let's just open the open the gates here and give a little bit of a summary. The supposed dark pyramid of Alaska is there's actual coordinates online. We have a supposed whistleblower who was counter intel agent named Doug Muchler, and Doug was found. His story was espoused and promulgated by the journalist that many of you will probably be familiar with, Linda Moulton Howe. She's done a lot in the field. She got a big name researching the flux of cattle mutilations in the 90s, which I think is probably her most compelling bit of research. I appreciate Linda Moulton Howe, and I'm not here to smack talk her, but she lost me a long time ago. I, this is the problem with the UFO community for me is where like I remember the last thing I heard of her before I was just like, all right, this isn't really for me, is we were talking about not us. I have contacted her before, but I was not talking with her. It was on Coast to Coast, and they were talking about just exactly what you would imagine, some ancient craft that was supposedly freshly recovered by the government, and some of her assets, like people contacts that she has, anonymous contacts within the intelligence communities, were giving her descriptions of all this, and there were some supposed pictures, and it's just like, how many times do we need to hear this story before it loses its appeal? How many fucking craft and bodies and like does the government have? And if you buy it all hook, line, and sinker, that's how you get yourself into these PDFs that you can find online of like the 300 known alien races that the government contacts. I don't know if it's 300, but I've seen those PDFs before. And they're fun. They're pretty cool, right? But I don't think anyone should be taking them seriously. And hell, maybe we should. But the simple fact of the matter is we do not have enough data to take them seriously yet. So, and that is how I feel about most of Linda Moulton Howe's body of research. It started out a lot more journalistic and then just got really, really coast to coast ancient aliens because she's prominent on both of them. I think she's on ancient aliens. She's definitely been on coast to coast for years though. So, yeah, we some backstory, I guess. But I didn't even get into the pyramid part yet. Supposedly, there is a giant pyramid in Alaska, 50 miles west of Mount McKinley, Denali, underground. As if that isn't crazy enough, it's also 4 times the size of the Pyramid of Giza. And here's your through line to a lot of other conspiracy theories related to the pyramid. There is the heavy implication that the government has this under wraps because they're trying to study the impressive amount of electromagnetic output that this pyramid has. There are all sorts of theories out there about how these pyramids are electromagnetic conductors of some kind. I am not a physicist. I cannot really weigh in on that. And that's something I've looked into in the past. It's been a while since I've come full circle and started looking into pyramid metaphysics again. But now that we're taking this to dive into the Alaskan rabbit hole here, I may do that. But I'm trying to keep. There's plenty to go through in this episode, so I'm not gonna dive into theoretical pyramid physics right now. What I will say, though, is that there is a long withstanding tradition of mountains and these giant antennas, I guess, if you will, being electromagnetic conductors, being spiritual reservoirs. It's a very Eastern motif. Even the Native Americans and the had sacred hills, the Mayans and Aztecs were building these pyramids. The pyramids are a very archetypal thing, and it makes sense to me that there's some sort of conductivity. Earth is a fluid organism. It's a collective organism, and things are always everything has a secondary function. It's not just mountains being majestic, and it's not just simply chaos, from the tectonic plates and whatever else. All those things undoubtedly play a factor, but adaptation shows us that something is going, especially given the full scale of, adaptation. Mountains have been here since a long time, right? Way longer than humans. So there's some sort of naturalized adaptation going on, I'm sure. So there is a withstanding tradition of this belief in the electromagnetic conductivity of pyramids and mountains and so forth. And there are a lot of people today who continue to believe this. I'm not totally certain on the physics of it, like I said, though. And that being said, so we're gonna try and unravel that a little bit, get into the story a bit more of the Dark Pyramid. So we're gonna do our best to try and unpack that story and see what's going on there. I also am going to be bringing up the Alaska Triangle a bit, which is kind of like a knockoff Bermuda Triangle, except in Alaska. Go figure. And I'm going to talk about the HARP facility a little bit as well, because that is one of the most prominent facilities in the world up in Fairbanks, Alaska. And I was trying to find more info on it. I always remember growing up around there hearing that it was the first and one of the biggest, or at least like the biggest for a long time. More have been cropping up. But I couldn't find anything to verify that as I was looking into it recently. So I'll look a little further. We'll see what I can find. But yeah, that's what I always heard growing up around Anchorage. And there have been multiple times where they've opened that facility up to the public. So I've known people to walk around there. I was never able to make it up there. Fairbanks is a hell of a drive. But I digress for the moment. I want to talk a little bit about going back up to Alaska. It won't take too long because I'm sure plenty of you are chomping at the bit to hear some insanity. But I got to give some shout outs. I saw a lot of people. I was only up there for a week, so I apologize if to whoever I wasn't able to see. I know some people are listening to this back home, but it was very quick, and we had a lot of fun. I was able to bring my lady up there with me, and I went to Alyeska in Girdwood, the ski resort that everyone goes up to, pretty world renowned. We had a and a lot of this, full disclosure, like I'm not made of money right now. My family is leaving Alaska after being up there for a long time, and Dad cashed in some flyer miles. So I got really lucky there. He didn't know what to do with those miles. You got to fly out to get anywhere in Alaska, so you just happen to stack them up living there. So it was a win-win all around. And then we were able to go to the ski resort in the downtime a little bit, and I even got to go to the new spa, the outdoor Nordic spa at some cut rates. So I got to do with my girlfriend, Brooke, the real tourist Alaskan experience and at some pretty reasonable prices. And man, it was much needed. I'm very thankful for it. That outdoor spa, it had like hot and cold plunges. It was surrounded by like a canopy of evergreens and it was snowing the whole time. It was wild. They even had a sauna with wall panels of Himalayan pink salt. So there was some interesting stuff going on there. It was the most it was the fanciest I have ever been in my life, bar none. It was a pretty sweet 3 hours. I also, the only other thing I'll mention here on the show that I feel like is worth note, I'm even more excited than the spa, was I got to see some good homies, some longtime homies that I grew up with. And I've always known them as musicians that love to fuck around, but they finally put a band together. It's like folk blues, good old bluesy rock and roll. It's a very familiar sound, but it's hard to pigeonhole. They do a good job of blending a lot of different things, and it's got a lot of energy. It's really well done. I told them, having seen them jam for so long, just fucking around, not even as a band, um, to see them as an actual band, I could tell the distinct difference. And man, they are an actual band. Go check them out. It's Black Barrel and the Bad Men. So shout out to Ryder, Luke, Budkey, and Benny, as well as the other action in the band. They got a new guy that I don't know who's a longtime guitarist, and they actually have Ryder's dad on drums, which is very fun. He's a talented musician. So go check out Black Barrel and the Bad Men. I will be featuring them at the commercial break and at the end of the show. Much love to you brothers out there. It was great to see you again. And going back to Alaska, like I said, really stoked the fire because I had multiple people ask me about the Dark Pyramid. And like, man, I haven't thought about this in a while. But back in the days when I wrote for The Last American Vagabond and I did their esoteric fringe material, and then I just kind of, true to how I do the show now, I just got burnt out on politics and left the Vagabond some years ago now. But I wrote an article for about the Dark Pyramid, and it was always my most popular article, and it stayed fairly relevant. It floated around. I don't remember the numbers, but I remember being impressed, and I remember my editor even pointing it out to me. So over time too. So that's always one that's really stoked the collective imagination. I'm surprised to see that it's still around and seems to be gaining a little bit of traction, but it's still one of those anomalous back burner things that people don't really know what to make of. People are either extremely skeptical, like, okay, well, clearly that's not true. How the fuck could any of that be true? And then there are people who are just so sold on it. Oh, there's a CIA whistleblower. Wow, that's, solid. Um, and I stand somewhere in the middle ground. I'll expound upon this, but I don't think there's a pyramid out there. I feel like there might be something out there, though. It's pretty weird that there's all this. It feels like this whole story is a giant red herring, like so many UFO headlines we see today. If you've listened to the show before, you know that I'm not a total naysayer against UFOs, but I don't trust the narrative. And UFO in the headlines to me just reads red herring. And what are you really trying to cover up, basically? It's weird how it came full circle, right? It used to be covering up the UFO with the headlines. Now it is UFO covering up other shit. Huh. It kind of just occurred to me. That's pretty strange. Also, as a little bit of a teaser, getting back into some of this dark pyramid research, I came across some interesting names that seem like great conversation to me. Yeah, they're fresh to me, so I don't know all of their history, all of where they stand on everything, but they seem like very reasonable, cogent, journalistic people that I saw on some videos discussing them following up. You know, you can go on YouTube and you can find those like 20-minute, they're interesting documentaries, you know, take everything with a grain of salt, but it's not just someone in front of a monitor, you know, they're actually talking to people, research, interviewing people, but it's just a YouTube channel. So in some of these, I found both of these people. I won't say their names yet because, you know, I also don't want to jinx it. I want to make sure they actually get on the show. But there are some people trying to follow up on this story that are not just Linda Moulton Howe. For a while, that's all it was. And, you know, it makes me wonder what the hell's going on here. It's an easy story to write off as a skeptic, but like on the surface level. But you, s- here's the thing. I think this is a good thing to bring up. Throughout my research into all this stuff throughout the years, I've come across the mentality, and I believe. Okay, all right. So let's break this down here. There's the book Mirage Men by author Mark Pilkington, and it is a story, and it was also made into a documentary. And I watched the documentary some time ago, and it made a big impression on me. I've been meaning to go read the book, but suffice it to say, it's a real story about counterintelligence, about the UFO story being used to actively spin the narrative to hide black budget, like secret government activity. And it drives a man insane. It's a very compelling, interesting story. And there's all sorts of who to trust in this real life story because one of the counterintelligence people who drove this man insane is actually a part of the documentary. So you get some counterintel. Actually, I don't know if they're counterintel. I mean, they're acting with counterintel, so probably, but they're definitely U.S. intelligence. Um, I'm trying not to get out of my field of depth here, especially when I didn't even anticipate bringing this up. But hearing some of the perspectives of the intelligence agents in this documentary made a lasting impression on me in how I view this research. Now, granted, anything they could be saying is a lie, but this just spoke to some an inkling I already had, and I'm not taking their word at face value. I think this is something that rings true in human psychology, and I like the way they articulated it. I don't even remember the guy's name, but I remember distinctly it was in this documentary. And it is that 90% of a counterintel story, a disinfo story, is going to be bullshit. But the 10% that's true, more often than not, they're going to make that the most outlandish part just to do the ultimate mind fuck, to make it really hard. And clearly, I'm sure they don't do that every time. That's part of the mind fuck. But it's all just to throw your sense of realism off in the story and the data. And I just can't help but think of that with the Dark Pyramid. If that's true, so there's 10% of this story is true and it's the craziest part, maybe there is something buried underground. Maybe it's not a pyramid. Maybe it's something very significant, though. I have no idea. And I don't have any stake in the claim. I don't give a shit, to be quite honest. Just aside from pure curiosity, I don't care about this story. But it really makes me wonder. All right, so we talked about Linda Moulton Howe a little bit. We brought up Doug Muchler. There's two names I'd like to bring up when sifting through the Dark Pyramid lore. There's Doug Muchler, the CIA intelligence agent, and there is Bruce Pearson. He's a man who got in contact with Linda Moulton Howe because, you know, journalists like this, they have an open email basically for anyone that would like to reach out to them if they have any tidbits or recollections of the story, however big or small. And this guy reached out to her, and she ended up sort of, some of these things are anonymous and whatever else, but this guy used his name, and his story was relevant enough where he started doing his own interviews and things like that. His name's Bruce Pearson, and he's got this story about how his father, you could get into all the nitty-gritty tiny details. You go listen to his interviews if you like. But his father was up in one of the remote villages of Alaska, um, because they had ended up there through work. If you, I believe his wife was a teacher, and that's how anybody, if you're not from those villages, that's how anybody makes it up there. It's through contracted work where you're going to facilitate the infrastructure of the community, right? And so while he was up there, he ran across this guy at a bar who was a military contractor. Um, Bruce Pearson's father was some sort of retired military, so they got to talking. This guy, they started telling him about this wild place he was going after some drinks, and he's like, "Hey, I can't really tell you all this, but we're all the way out here. Who's gonna believe you? You seem like a cool guy, former military. I know the type. So check this out." And he starts telling him that he's going to this remote place. He foreshadows properly, um, because he's not trying, he doesn't even know all the details, and he's not trying to give this random guy all the details. But long story short, this guy is driving a payload of some kind. It's like giant Pelican briefcases, so we don't know what's in there, to the Dark Pyramid site. And Bruce Pearson's father ends up getting invited aboard. So they go on this helicopter ride. It's just the pilot that he met at the bar and Bruce Pearson's father. And at a certain point when they're getting close, he tells Pearson Sr. that all the technology on the helicopter is going to start to go haywire, but he says not to worry, this thing is ready for that, or the engine's going to be just fine, and I know what to do. But it's because of this weird electromagnetic presence, that's built all around the lore of the pyramid, and this seems to be why the government is studying it. So they go through that electromagnetic haze event, and they land, and there's giant mine shafts, and there's like a helicopter pad, and there's some basic small military outpost stuff, but obviously no pyramid because that's underground, and that's where the mine shafts go. The story, to my understanding, doesn't get into, did Pearson Sr. have to hide? Was he questioned on why he was there? This, who knows? Who knows if this is even real at all? But it still makes me wonder. Now, Bruce Pearson is a man that is living out in Alaska somewhere. He's a real guy. You can find his picture and everything. So I don't know. And all he has is that story from his father. And so that leaves us with Doug Muchler, the CIA intel agent. Okay. I apologize. I think I've called him a CIA intel agent a couple times. He is a U.S. Air Force counter intel agent, just to clarify, because this man, it's kind of easy for people to just become names on conspiracy forums, but you can watch interviews of this guy too. Back in the day when I first heard of this story, I I had heard him on, I think it was on Coast to Coast, but he was definitely recorded in conversations with Linda Moulton Howe. But you can even, yeah, I even saw his face in some interviews online. So it's always especially interesting to me when these people, the less they hide, the more real the story becomes. Not so much in like the the reality of the pyramid, but you know what I mean, the reality of the lore itself. And it again makes me wonder why, if the pyramid isn't real, and I don't think it is, what is with all this? So Doug Muchler gets stationed at Fort Richardson Air Force Base. This is the biggest Air Force base outside of Anchorage. It's the biggest Air Force base in Alaska, bar none. There's not much in Alaska to begin with, and without Fort Richardson and the military infrastructure, Alaska wouldn't be nearly as populated as it is now. And so he makes it there in the 80s, late 80s. Let's check. Yep, 1989. So he gets there to Fort Richardson, which is, like I said, just right outside of Anchorage. And he starts to survey himself with the land. Remember the 80s as well. So he's going and checking out maps. He wants to know the area a bit. He's a military mind that's curious about the new place he's stationed. And he notices that there is, spoiler alert, right in the spot, the coordinates that Linda Moulton Howe suggests or says that allegedly the pyramid is definitely at. I'll read you the coordinates here. I'm not good at reading coordinates. Um, but it's I don't even know how to read that. I, I've never been a coordinate guy. I'll post it in the show notes. How about that? But you got your longitudes and latitudes, and you got your numbers and degrees, right? um, so he sees this part of the map that's not surveyed, which is strange. It's just kind of blacked out. Everything else is surveyed. Doesn't mean anyone's living there or anyone does anything there, but it's been checked out vaguely, at least enough to make a map of. And so he just puts that on the back burner. He wonders about it. But where the story gets especially sensational is some years later, in the early 90s, Muchler sees on a local broadcast an exclusive report about how there has just been an archaeological find in this exact spot of a pyramid underground that, the government's very excited about, interested in, and it was a big deal, and that was it. No national coverage, no follow-up from any news stations, including the one that broke the story. It was wiped, as the story goes. Doug Muchler can't find anything about it. He's just very curious at this point. So he goes to the news station. Everyone in any position of power says, we don't even know what you're talking about. And then allegedly, as he's about to leave, a junior employee pulls him back and says, hey, look, these two men in black basically came, got the tapes, and gave us the hush hush and said, better not talk about any of this. So now Muchler's really curious, and he goes to look around a little more in the archives and starts coming across material about the pyramid itself. He is Air Force counter intel, so he does have some pretty serious access to certain things. It's just a matter of knowing what to look for. So as far as the story goes, theoretically, I can see it. I get it. I don't know if any of this is really true, but I can see it being possibly true. But also, is this not just part of the spin, right? I am the last person to take a counter intel agent at their word, but we'll get into that. I mean, there's not a whole lot to get into other than just wondering, but we'll at least try and flesh it out. So the government was they were picking up some weird electromagnetic activity in this remote part of Alaska, the 50 miles west of Mount McKinley. Yes. I will read this bit. I don't know where this came from anymore. I believe I got it on earthfiles.org, but I'm reading this from the old The Last American Vagabond article that I wrote on the pyramid. I wrote it when I was like 19, 18. So I guess I didn't back up my sources that well, but I know I read this from a Linda Moulton Howe official piece of work from her website. And I guess I'll mention soon how and why I contacted her, because I did hint on that a little bit. So, as reported by Linda Howe from an anonymous retired Navy captain, it was found, the pyramid, through its massive electromagnetic signal output, which coincides with the claims. Quoting the retired Navy captain, the DEW line system, distant early warning, that we built in the early 1950s took some 8,000 to 10,000 scientists, engineers, and construction workers into the wilderness that had once seen only the occasional hunter, trapper, gold miner, or native Alaskan village. All of this is on record. The dew line system is an important part of um, military technological history and Alaskan history as well. And this is what I mean when I say that most of what Alaska is today is due to the military. Uh, Continuing the quote, but in the planning of the White Alice and Dew Line systems, White Alice communication system, which was the early testing grounds of radio as we knew it, it started in Alaska because of all this vast, expansive area that no one's doing anything with, and also a Cold War terror and all this stuff. Alaska being some sort of weird front line, secret front line, so on and so forth. So, because of White Alice and Dew Line systems, there was one additional interest in the location and construction of the sites picked for a wax facility or Dew Line antenna, and that interest was electromagnetic interference. In fact, due to the nature of how the White Alice system operates, using backscattered signals caused by atmospheric turbulence, um, which in effect causes radio signals to bounce off the ionosphere and back down to the Earth over the horizon to receive stations hundreds of miles away, it is even more sensitive to EMI because the atmosphere has propagation issues. There are sunspot effects from the sun. There are solar flares that produce the northern lights. That selecting the proper location for the antennas would be critical. It is so surprising to think that in planning for the installation of the White Alice system in the mid to late 1950s, which was part of our Dew Line effort to set up an early warning system to protect us, from the Soviet Union, etc., and taking and recording EMI levels at proposed White Alice systems. This guy really rambles. It's surprising that someone might have detected an unknown source of extremely high EMI activity, and yet there would be nothing seen that is causing the problem. Okay. Um, it continues saying, assume that you are part of a scientific team tasked with finding the unknown source of the extremely large EMI signature using a variety of highly technical measurement surveys to try to locate that signal and finally determine that nothing was there. It is easy, therefore, to think that once the location of the EMI source was located, and with the Cold War tension that existed between the US and Soviet Union, that a remote location in the Alaskan wilderness was identified as the location of a large unknown EMI source. So he's saying that specifically because of, I'm not going to try and decipher his freaking rambling anymore. Because of the Cold War presence and the fact that they were building these communication systems and found this anomalous source, they found it very important to try and vet out so that they didn't find some sort of a Soviet cell down there trying to pick up in an underground base military tactics and signals and whatnot. And so they get down there and find the pyramid, but you can't just get down to a pyramid. So it takes time, and there's a lot of studying, and there's a lot of suspicion, what's going on. And what Doug Mutchler finds in some of his studies, including details that we just described here, is that there was a nuclear Chinese study in 1992 where the government was sanctioned by the United Nations to perform nuclear testing underground. It was a very controversial approval to be made, but it was it was safer than detonating it above ground, I guess. And because of that, geologists were able to use the vibrations of the blast to map out underground territory, like echolocation or whatever. Um, and some black budget covert geologists that were working on the pyramid decided to link it together, and they were able to map out that there was a pyramid underneath. Very X-Files, isn't it? Oh, and by the way, I apologize. We're just having an informal chat here in the long run. But Bruce Pearson's father, he went on that supposed helicopter ride in the early 1970s. And the end of Doug Muchler's story is that he was met by some more men in black who told him to shut the fuck up and stop looking into this if he wanted to continue life as he knew it, and he did for his whole career until now. And so, I don't know, a guy with nothing to lose, a guy that has a rebellious streak, or someone who was given the green light by his intelligence agencies to espouse a crazy story about the pyramid that was 90% bullshit, but 10% truthful. I don't know. You tell me. You tell me. It looks like we're pretty far past the half-hour mark, but I'm going to go ahead and hop into that commercial break, and we will talk a little bit more about Alaska and the heart facilities in the Alaska Triangle when we get back. Don't forget, I am Anthony Tyler. This is Black Hoodie Alchemy, and you are about to listen to Black Barrel and the Bad Men from Eagle River, Alaska.
Howdy do, everybody. That's right, it's me, good old Tippy Patson here. And I got some great dang old news, man. With the new year, I am, in fact, going to become the spiritual mentor for NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers. And I tried to reach out through the interwebs, and we got a hold of him. I'm going out to New York, and dang old man, it just feels good to have a win. It was an interesting year, 2023, but it had some tough times. As you know, we've lost many of our recruits. But don't worry, the League of Extraordinary Gents ain't going nowhere. We're just trying to expand our dang old horizons. And speaking of dang old horizons in the new year, a lot of people doing that old New Year's resolutions and whatnot. Well, don't forget Tippy Patson's Rainbow Body weight loss program, with a month's worth at a time of Colombian cocaine paste called Bazuco. But also, there's a lot of great old tips and tricks. So keep this in mind for your New Year's resolution. If you're trying to do more cardio, just start smoking more cigarettes. That's what a lot of doctors won't tell you. Okay, but smoking cigarettes, it raises your blood pressure and makes your heart beat fast. So it's basically the same thing as cardio. Also, have you ever accidentally cooked like a real hot meal and then put some aluminum foil on it and noticed that dang old aluminum was melting? A lot of doctors will tell you that ain't no good. But Tippy Patson is here to tell you that some aluminum shavings in your coffee every day will keep the doctor away. It's just as good for you as zinc or iron or all them metals. So, you could do that. It's an ancient Chinese remedy, I do believe. And lastly, just keep in mind, you can't have too much blood. So the serial killer Richard Chase, he was always trying to get blood in him. And he did it in the wrong ways. But he had the right idea, I tell you what, boy. So, just get a bunch of blood and just start putting that inside you. The more virile you are, the more like gasoline, like blood, metaphorically your body will have to work with, and you'll be, all the better for it. These are all the tips I'm going to give Aaron, but, I can't give away all my secrets on the radio. So, just a little bit in there for now, I hope y'all have a good new year and stick to your dang old resolutions and, put some of my tips into effect. Tippy Patson is out of here for now, folks. We'll keep you updated on my travels. All right, take it easy.
Hello, everybody. It is I, Jefferson Tillamook Slinger, former Illuminati cloning lab manager and current member of the League of Extraordinary Gents. As you've heard, Tippy Patson is going to the Big Apple, so I will be holding down the fort here in the Everglades, and I've been thinking this is probably a very good time for like a rebranding type thing, and I've recently sobered up using Bazooko with the Tippy Patson Rainbow Body Weight Loss Program, high five, and I've been thinking like, I need to just reinvent myself. I've had a lot of dumb names. I know Tillamook Slinger, but so I gotta come up with something sleek. So I was thinking Jeff Mamba. Yeah, Jeff Mamba. Like, because I've been watching a lot of Chris Angel Mind Freak lately, and Jeff Mamba, Chris Angel, kind of had a similar thing going on. But so I was thinking like Jeff Mamba, Mind Master. And that might be a good one. But I don't know for sure. I'm clearly going to be a master, so maybe I should be a little more descriptive. Like, I could be like Jeff Mamba, mind jockey. Like a horse jockey, except for your mind. Or I could be like Jeff Mamba, mind surfer, because I surf the waves of your mind. I don't know. But I think I'm on the right track. If you want to give me some ideas, or tell me which one is your favorite, go ahead and contact Joseph Rupert of the Fringe FM's Lighting the Void. I'll give you his personal cell phone number. It's 779 2011 1952 9. Write that down. Okay. Jeff Mamba holding it down in the Everglades for the League of Extraordinary Gents, and I am out of here. What is up, Protendos? It is I, Muscle Tornado. I've just, you may know me as a super fit DMT numerologist explorationer and, member of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But I've had a lot of casualties lately, and, my hand is gone. I have a hook now. I've lost my hair, I think due to the stress. I lost my eye recently. And unfortunately, recently, I was violently savaged by piranhas in the water. And my leg is gone. So, I have like a thigh nub. But other than that, I'm doing great. I'm doing really good, guys. I haven't really been smoking a lot of DMT lately, but I've been keeping strong with the insufflation of the pixie stick, and it's been a good time. So I just started wearing a pirate hat because I figured I should just embrace it right now. I'm not really sure the whole pirate code is because unfortunately we lost our cosmic ghost pirate because I accidentally changed the channel on him. He was just stuck in the TV. So the only one that could have really understood my plight, now that I've come to terms with it, is gone. So, but I do have a cool peg leg now. That's pretty sweet. So, we're just gonna rock it. I'm gonna put a lot of bedazzlements and jewels on it, and you know, we'll have a good time. So, but yeah, Tippy Patson's leaving, so it's just gonna be me and Jeff Mamba. So, we're gonna see what the future holds, guys. But take it sleazy, and Muscle Tornado is over and out.
Once had it all in the palm of my hand. I let it slip right by where I stand. Why would you leave? Would you leave? What do you need? Why would you leave? Would you leave? What do you need? Why would you? Why would you? Would you leave? Yeah, yeah. Oh. Why would you leave? Would you leave? What do you need?
Welcome back to Black Hoodie Alchemy, folks. I am Anthony Tyler, and we are still talking about the Alaskan Pyramid, among other things. Other things related to crazy Alaska. And, we pretty much wrapped up the basics of the Dark Pyramid of Alaska. You can go follow up with some of the links I have in the show notes. And I hope to vet this story out, the ins and outs of it, and find out what's, if anything's been verified and what hasn't, so on and so forth, with some guests that I have coming up. I have some accepts. I had a couple people accept my invites, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. I don't want to give them away yet. I don't even have dates yet. I'm gonna plan that after I get this recorded. But I'm hoping that this episode is an introductory to the lore, and then in some upcoming episodes we will sift through it even more. And even if I don't get those guests on for whatever reason, we'll have a part 2 where we sift through some of this. But the last thing I'll say about the Dark Pyramid, I contacted Linda Moulton Howe because as I was doing this research, I was living with my great uncle. So he's like an old grizzled alcoholic at this point, and his wife had moved out, and his brother's wife had moved out, and they just lived in this house and drank like a 32 pack between them every day. And if you've listened to this show, all throughout, you may have heard me mention the story where my drunken uncles get on Alaska State Troopers. The episode is called Madman Manhunt, and they were basically drunkenly trying to break into the dump so that they could harvest a bunch of copper wire before everyone else got to it. And the cops didn't know that, but they saw them drunk and hanging out, and it became a whole thing. They got away, but so that's the kind of people we're working with. And in my book Dive Manual, a bit of that is centered around me and my buddies at a young age in the Alaskan winters, kind of stumbling onto psychedelics and Jungian philosophy, and how it could have been a negative thing where we were just doing drugs to pass the time, and it blossomed into something very beautiful and insightful that we all grew from. And it was in the basement of this uncle's house where all that happened. And all the dudes from Black Barrel and the Bad Men are a part of this honorary crew. Shout out to longtime homie Brett K as well, one of the OGs that was in on the mix. Brett has done some real deep dives with me. Is someone that has really helped me out a lot in the past. a beautiful person, and we actually ended up talking years ago because of my work for the Vagabond. And it had been floating around. He read my article and hit me up on Facebook. We started talking about the Alaska Pyramid, and ever since then, we've been really good friends, brothers, honestly, all these guys. So much love to Brett. And yeah, the fucking pyramid, baby. It's got some mojo. So my uncle, I don't even know if I believe this, okay? So just bear with me here. My uncle said that he also saw that news broadcast that Doug Muchler saw in the early 90s. And he had always had questions about it. So I'm here just telling him the story of all the dark pyramid research I've come across. And as I tell him this, he doesn't sit on it for a minute. As soon as I bring it up, because I see in my old article, I don't know where I read it, but in my old Vagabond article, I have Channel 13 News. So I told him that, and as soon as I said it, his eyes lit up. He dropped his cigarette, and he said, "Holy shit, I forgot all about that. I saw that." And he's 100% not a guy to fake that. I've never seen that kind of recollection in any of my interactions with him. I don't talk to him much anymore. God bless him. He's kind of hit the skids a little bit. You know, he just kind of gets a little more jaded and bitter with age, as alcoholism tends to do to somebody. But Uncle Charles, you know, salute to you. You're a crazy motherfucker. He's got a lot of stories. He's the story guy, and he's not an embellisher either. He just lives a crazy life and is willing to talk about it. So I don't know. He's a drunken dude that made it on Alaska State Troopers because he was trying to sneak into the dump. You know, he is a burnout Catholic that you know, has multiple DUIs, but he put all his kids through school, not college, through high school. He made sure everybody graduated, you know, so he's not a scumbag. I don't know. I don't even know what to make of it. There's no evidence, but I saw the recognition in my uncle's eyes, and I thought, huh, well, you know, let's send an email to Linda Moulton Howe. And she responded back to me. I got her on the phone. I talked with her briefly. I didn't even talk to her this was like the inklings, the very beginnings of like my sense of journalism. And so I was just kind of starstruck. So I facilitated the conversation. I said, blah, blah, blah. This is what we got going on. My uncle, da, da, da. He's not computer savvy. So I'm the middleman here. And you know, oh, thank you very much for contacting me. This is very interesting. Here's my uncle now. And they talked for a good 10 minutes or so, and that's it. You know, we never heard any follow-up. I didn't expect any follow-up. It's a very anecdotal story, but you know, Uncle Charles is in her journalistic notes on the pyramid. I don't know. She probably never even talked about it publicly, but you know, for whatever it's worth, it's in there. That's one thing that I can't, you know, I got to be thankful for. I've lived a crazy, crazy life. You know, my father worked on the infamous Israel Keys case. I have friends who grew up with the wannabe Children of Thunder cult and watched them lose their minds. You know, I've seen UFOs in Alaska, whatever they are. I have no idea. I've seen them though. It's just the tip of the iceberg, man. One of my I could go on, but I've definitely come across some crazy people and some crazy stories. So I don't know, just take that for what it is. But that for now is the Dark Pyramid. And since I'm talking about Alaskan lore, I wanted to bring up the Alaska Triangle and the Heart Facility as well. And just like the pyramid, we will get deeper into this in a part 2 of some kind. But I want to set the stage. The Alaska Triangle, as I mentioned, is the Bermuda Triangle, same type of situation, except in Alaska. And it's got thousands and thousands of disappearances. There's an old story of a Japanese airline in the 70s that had a big confrontation with some UFOs in the Alaska Triangle. I guess it doesn't really matter, but technically speaking, it's not the Alaskan, it's the Alaska Triangle. And for a little while, I thought that this might even be something completely made up in the way of the, you know, like the dragon and mermaid mockumentaries that people weren't totally sure on for some reason, and or maybe more tongue-in-cheek. It's definitely tongue-in-cheek like Ancient Aliens, but the Alaska Triangle itself has been a thing since the 70s in vernacular, and it's something that it's not just simply a media made selling point. It's a thing, whatever it is. It's definitely part of the lore, and it goes from Barrow at the top of the state to Anchorage to down the Panhandle to Juneau, the capital, and that is the triangle. So it's not a uniform triangle. It's very lopsided. I don't remember the geometrical terms. Go fuck yourself. But we have a massive Venn diagram of UFOs and disappearances within this triangle, and I don't know, it's fucking crazy. This is one of those things where I had to bring up, and there are stories that we could get into more, but I could save that. I think some of my guests will be able to elaborate on that a lot more. I can tell you that I wasn't even aware of this part. This is pretty new to me, but there's an old story of and specific lore surrounding Mount Hayes in Alaska in the triangle that has to do with potential alien bases and disappearances. So there is a whole lot going on here, and I don't even know how one begins to untangle that from a scientific point of view. Trying to understand you're trying to approach it from an electromagnetic angle is interesting and viable, but proves difficult when actually trying to investigate, I guess, like from a data point of view. I don't think any serious geologists are going out there and studying the quote unquote Alaska Triangle. So, there's not a whole lot of scientific funding going to this, not a public record. So who knows what's really going on, but it's a very curious piece, and it's a massive triangle. It covers damn near most of the state. So I don't know. I don't know how much of the triangle is really necessary in this. That seems a little silly to me. I think what we can say, though, is that Alaska is a very strange, wild state with a lot of anomalous activity. Is it the energy from the mountains? I don't know. Alaska has always had a mystical, mythical sort of presence to it. And let us not forget that that is the place where most people go to hide in the U.S. If you're, ducking out the mafia or some other crimes or something like that, a lot of people go to Alaska, and that's just a proof. That's a genuine fact. That's not like a stereotype or anything. So Alaskan Triangle or just state of Alaska super crazy? I'm not sure, but if you Google Alaska Triangle, rest assured you'll come across some wild stories. Now I've got a last fun bit to tell you about. My voice feels like it's kind of giving out here a little bit. I am a bit jet lagged still, but I can't pass this up. And so I have an Alaska Triangle harp tie-in here, and it's not the one that you might think. It's more historical than theoretical. So one of the most infamous missing cases of the Alaska Triangle was the missing flight that was just never found at all, no wreckage or anything, that had House Majority Leader Hale Boggs of Louisiana, and among other people, to include Nick Begich Sr., who was about to win an election for the House of Representatives in Alaska. He had already won once before, and he had basically won the election, and he was flying to Juneau for the finishing action. And this was in the early 70s. And like I said, the plane was never found. He never knew he won, and Don Young ended up taking his place, and Don Young took his place for a long time, decades, the longest serving Republican in congressional history, as a matter of fact. And that is, take that with a grain of salt. I'm just looking at the Don Young Wikipedia page so I can make sure I have his name right, and picked up that little tidbit. But I always found that weird. I'm not trying to slander a politician with baseless conspiracy theories, but I don't really respect nearly any politicians. So I've always wondered, if there was some sort of conspiracy angle getting Nick Begich out, it would make sense that the person to replace him would be, a ringer for whoever killed Nick Begich and would keep that ringer in for a long time. So always seemed kind of weird, Don Young. Now, the other interesting pieces of that is that his son, Mark Begich, became a U.S. Senator for Alaska, 2009 to 2015. They got a middle school named after him and everything. Nick Begich Jr., believe it or not, became the man to start writing the initial material about all the HARP conspiracy theories. He was the go-to guy on Coast to Coast. he was the guy who was writing the first books. Nick Begich Jr. is the HARP conspiracy theory poster boy. And, he's known as a reclusive alcoholic, unfortunately. If you bring up HARP anymore, he will not talk about it. There was a period of time where I was interested in getting in contact with him, but I had a mutual friend that grew up in Anchorage. He was older than me, and he grew up around the Begiches, and he said, don't bother. He doesn't talk to anyone about it. It's a sore spot for him because, in one way or another, it's very clear that doing that made him the black sheep and made him ostracized from the family. And it seems like he was a very distant father as well, because I've run into Nick Begich Jr.'s son several times, and he is a known drug addict, unfortunately. So there's a lot of it's very much the archetypal political family. You have the clean cut upper surface, and just below you have a lot of turmoil. And it's very interesting that we see a quintessential piece of American conspiracy theory lore come out of this family turmoil. And yeah, to this day, no one knows what happened to Nick Begich Sr., but I have heard word through the local grapevine of people who know them that even he is very convinced that his father was not killed, or was killed. He didn't die accidentally. So, and what do I think about all the HARP stuff? I think most of it is overblown, and I'm not a physicist, but just the stuff that they say they can do is weird. Lately they've demonstrated how they can, create artificial northern lights. We know that cloud seeding is a thing. So without getting into deep science, I know that weather modification, at least at a basic premise, is a proven science. We get into all this, that people put chemtrails in it with aerosol spraying to help weather modification. That I don't know. That's out of my field of depth. I think it's out of most people's field of depth. All we can do is hunt down the leads as best we can to try and piece it together, but it's a never-ending rabbit hole of intelligence and counterintelligence. And to my best understanding of HARP and even like chemtrail, since I brought it up, I will defer to the 90% bullshit, 10% truth. Sometimes that 10% truth is the craziest bit of the story. And I don't know where it all goes. I'm not gonna even make a claim like my best guess. I have no idea, but I know that most of it is highly suspect in terms of credibility. But that doesn't mean that all of it is. And chemtrails aside, which is a very loaded topic, I mean, even HARP is, but I don't think they're controlling people's brains or anything like that. But HARP definitely is doing some wild stuff. Absolutely. And who's to say how they're implementing all of those findings? We have no idea. We just have no idea. And they shut down for a period of time as I graduated high school, the HARP facility in Fairbanks. And during that time, it was actually sort of maintained by the University of Fairbanks. And I believe it was used in some of their programs as like an observatory type situation, but that's it. Recently, it's been opened up again within the last few years or so. And I read an article about how they have been inducing artificial northern lights. Very interesting stuff. So you can't tell me that they're not on the cutting edge of weather technology out there. But again, I don't know. I don't understand the implications. I won't pretend like I do. But maybe in the part 2, hopefully we got some guests that will help us sift through some of this more. But that's it for now. That's the Dark Pyramid of Alaska, the mysterious Alaska Triangle. 2 separate things, not the same thing. Sounds like the same thing. And HARP facility in Fairbanks, Alaska. Technically, Gacona, I believe. Yeah, if we want to get technical, it's Gacona. But I mean, that's just a small village name that no one is hardly ever going to use. No disrespect, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it's interesting food for thought, because again, I don't really know what to make out of any of it, but it's really juicy lore from my home state, and I hope you got something out of it. Hope it was worthwhile. Don't forget to check out Black Barrel and the Bad Men. About to play some more of them coming up. And thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to check out my books, Dive Manual, Hunt Manual. Get in on your esoteric alchemical philosophy and even some of your unexplainable phenomena questions with those books. And you could check out some of my other action in my link tree posted in the description. Hop on the YouTube, see what I got going on. Got some good stuff cooking for 2024. I am excited about announcements to come. I hope to hear from you next week. Don't forget, this is Black Hoodie Alchemy. I am Anthony Tyler here on the Fringe FM. Smoke weed and God bless.
How many more days can you hold out? How much longer can you wait? She is. There was a time I thought I could answer, but my tongue gets tied as my thoughts drift away. Glory, glory, hallelujah. The sun is shining, shining down. Glory, glory, hallelujah. I'm alive and I'm feeling fine. All those simple thoughts, all those peaceful dreams,